to the Daily Fantasy Edge. Of course, I'm Peter Jennings. I go by CSU Ram 88 across the daily fantasy industry. And as always, joined by Al Zeidenfeld and Adam Levitan. And before we get into the news and notes on the podcast, and I guess it's correlated, we have to give a shout out to the Mans, Adam. Pete Manzanelli made possibly the greatest video around this podcast that we've seen for this pod. So why don't you give the listeners an update on where they can go find that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I hate to undercut Man's thing here, but I know the real Peter Overzet. He's a normal, nice guy. I can't believe he's carrying on this Pete Manzanelli bit for so long. He's going on like, I thought he was going to kill this bit like literally like 3 years ago, but it keeps going, somehow keeps going. And now I think the pinnacle of this bit is he did a parody of us three where he's auditioning to be on here. Making fun of all of the stupid things that we do. And we say he has me making sweet love to Jerry. He has Al playing video games. He has Pete's wife leaving him. He has it all. So if you guys did not see this video, you can find it on any of our Twitters. You can also go to YouTube, just search Pete Manzanelli. But yeah, it was, I mean, Mans it's just incredible video. And like the details are absurd. He's got like my Amazon boxes in there and like Al's background, like my map. Attention to detail is absurd. So Al, I know you saw the video. Are you afraid of being replaced by the Mans here?
No, I'm looking forward to it actually, because I could actually spend more time playing video games and not talking to you two knuckleheads.
Sounds like a good life, Smith.
I know, right? Like more time to. First of all, I wanted to thank him for the greatest piece of promotion that this podcast has had in the 5-year history of this podcast, and that's really saying something. You know, that is the best piece of promotion to get people to maybe listen to the podcast who hadn't found it yet. Just saying that he did a good job.
Mans, you did a great job. And, we'll get to it. But Mans also, my wife was teetering on leaving me. And then Emmanuel Sanders goes out and gets the same exact entry that I had. So I don't know. That's we'll get to that when we get to the Broncos game. But Mans, big time shout out. That was hilarious, and you might have just jinxed a lot of things. So we'll have to keep tabs on how that goes forward. Adam, we do need to get to the news and notes on the podcast, though. The listener league is at 10K. We have to keep filling this thing.
Yeah, I mean, don't embarrass us and let it overlay. I know there's not as much excitement as there was last week when it was 10K for the first time, but this is still a 10K entry rake free tournament with a 50K prize pool, 3 entry max. It is undoubtedly the best tournament on DraftKings. Flat payout, 24% of the field will at least double their money. If you're practicing game selection, which I talk about every week on the solo pod, if you're practicing any semblance of game selection, you have to be playing in this tournament. So the way you get in is you just find the landing page for this podcast. It's on DK Playbook. You can find it through mobile. You can find it through Google. You can find it through the desktop. Just go to DK Playbook, find the landing page. The link is on there. It's very easy. You can go to the Mans video for more instructions on how to get into the podcast.
Yeah, have a stool sample ready.
A retina scan.
Make sure you click on all the fire hydrants too.
Oh, it's so good. All right, let's dive into the games, considering we have a full slate, no buys, of course. We have the Jets at Bills, Adam. We need the news and notes, and is it finally Josh Allen season?
Yeah, what a way to start with this game.
SZN, too, for people out.
Yeah, Peter learned what SZN means. Yeah, Sam Darnold with his foot injury is expected back, going to start. Certainly not a soft spot, going up to Buffalo. Buffalo quietly second in the NFL in yards per play allowed. Only the Ravens are better. I think the Bills smell a chance to win here and have a really good chance to do so. Speaking of which, they cut Kelvin Benjamin, they cut Andre Holmes, leave Zay Jones and Robert Foster. I'm just not that confident in Josh Allen's ability to get the ball to these guys on a consistent basis. And, I know that Josh Allen's legs have been ridiculous lately, but I don't think he's Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's Mike Vick. Like, his rushing expectation is nowhere near what we've seen the last couple of weeks. So I think his expectation is way lower than people think. You could make a case for LaShawn McCoy, I guess, maybe, but overall, I don't think I'm too interested in this game. Al, do you see anything I'm missing?
I mean, there's a couple of things, but I haven't really been on the Josh Allen train. Yes, I probably missed the boat the last 2 weeks, and I've just mixed metaphors with a train and a boat in the same sentence. So we're off to a roaring start here with this game and my mixed metaphors. I think Zay Jones at 4,200 at least provides a little bit of value. I'm not sure that we need to force it or anything, but at least he gives you a little bit of value. They released basically everybody else that was on the team trying to catch balls the last few weeks. He's got 5 targets in 6 of his last 7 games, so at least there's a little bit of a floor. And another play on the other side that gives us a little bit of a floor with the tight end wasteland that we've seen for the value tight ends. Chris Herndon's still about $3K this week, and 14 targets over the past 2 weeks. He's tied for 5th in the league amongst all the tight ends, and a 20-plus yard reception in his last 4 games. So hopefully you shouldn't catch a donut if you play Chris Herndon this week. Pete, are you on board with any of the value there to try and stuff in some of the high-priced studs? Because there's a lot of them in really great situations this week.
Herndon won't cost you a lot of money, will he, this week? All right, I'm terrible at the bad jokes. I'm going to stop that. Josh Allen may not be those quarterbacks, but he does have a little Saquon Barkley in him. Did you see that hurdle he had earlier in the year, Adam, or are you just not watching any of the tape?
Yeah, Team Watch the Games is very impressed with Josh Allen's running ability. That's nice. They can have fun.
Okay. He's got a big arm. Josh Allen truthers definitely starting to gain some momentum. I hope my opponents play him. I think there's a lot of risk. I will point out LaShawn McCoy is a big-time trend playing at home, and Josh Allen running certainly will help him going forward. So he's probably my favorite play here. There's a ton of fantasy goodness and tons of value in these other games. So let's move on to the Giants at Redskins. Mark Sanchez is only 4K, Adam. If there wasn't so much value, I think he might be in consideration. But what are the news and notes here, and any interest in the butt fumble king himself?
Yeah, I hated to see Colt McCoy down. One of the original members of Team Preseason really had a big chance to try to get the Redskins into the playoffs. He goes down. I mean, the problem with Mark Sanchez is he wasn't even on the team 3 weeks ago, and their offense was just like so pop gun anyways. Josh Doxson is nowhere near what I or other people thought he would be coming out of college. Crowder's been banged up. Jordan Reed is not being used correctly. So they did get Chris Thompson back, which I think helps, but I just think the offense as a whole is in trouble here. I think the real options in this game are on the other side of the ball. Last time Odell Beckham faced Josh Norman, lit him up for 8-136-0 in majority coverage. I think we'll see that matchup again, and Odell will win it. And then, we have these decisions, Al, at the top of the running back range are hard. I haven't thought my way all the way through them yet, but there's no doubt that Saquon with his pass game role, Zeke with his volume, and Christian McCaffrey with his pass game role are all awesome plays within 700 of each other. Parsing between them, I think, is one of the keys to the slate for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Barkley's been extremely consistent over the course of the entire season. Now, are we going to fade him because this is the second time they've seen each other, division matchup, blah, 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 blah. So he just basically gets over 20 points every single week. Last week, 24 carries. He's seen 20 carries and 20 plus carries in 3 of his last 4 games, something that he really hasn't done for the rest of the year. Maybe that's cutting into his pass game work a little bit, because in the games that he's had 20 plus carries, he's only seen 4 targets, 3 targets, 5 targets, instead of the games where he has like mid-teens carries and sees 8 to 12 targets. I'd rather see that Saquon Barkley. That's way more valuable to us on DraftKings than the one that's getting 25 carries and 5 targets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's tough. The Redskins defense has played really well. They've had a ton of injuries, but more on the offensive side. The Giants defense, I think, is interesting a little bit. I wish they were at home. I'd be really excited to click them. But, yeah, Sanchez certainly could really struggle here. And they're just really thin at the quarterback position. Brutal injury from McCoy, who was excited to finally get out there. I think Odell Beckham's probably the top-end play. And, Adam, same kind of question. You have Odell Beckham, you have Michael Thomas this week, you have DeAndre Hopkins priced down, you have Julio Jones. How are you handling the top-end receivers?
Yeah, I like Odell. Well, we're going to get to these other guys. I have some problems with Julio. I have some problems with Michael Thomas, and we're going to get to Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins, who I like. So we can get there when we get there. But, yeah, I think those are interesting decisions up there. But for me, it's relatively clear-cut, and Odell would be right there for me, but I think I might prefer the Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins plays a little bit, but certainly prefer Odell to, especially once you consider price. I think Odell to Michael Thomas, you save a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk about those when we get there for sure.
Okay, well, let's pivot there right away. We have Tampa Bay, New Orleans Tampa Bay game. Total has come down. This opened at 58, and it's moved down to 55, which is really interesting to me, Adam. Your thoughts there and the news and notes?
Yeah, I think people just realized that New Orleans has been among the most run-heavy teams over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks since Mark Ingram got back, and Tampa Bay has actually been running the ball a reasonable amount lately too. And yeah, you could say that the Saints' run-heavy ways have been because they've been blowing so many teams out, and maybe that's true too. But I do think that the way they want to play is through Mark Ingram and Kamara in the run game to set up Drew Brees for this insane efficiency that he's shown. So I'm not surprised the total is coming down whatsoever. From an injury perspective, Deshaun Jackson likely to miss again with a thumb injury, and that's exciting news for me because people have been following for a couple of years know how much I love Chris Godwin, Penn State's own. Chris Godwin in the 2017 class had the best measurables out of anybody, better than Corey Davis. Last year as a rookie, 13th in yards per route run, which is really exceptional. This year, 23rd in yards per route run, which is also awesome. 3 games without Deshaun Jackson in his career. Been over 100 yards twice. Third time was 98 yards. Saints are also a funnel defense. They're extremely tough against the run. Teams like to throw against them, and you don't have to ask the Bucs twice to throw on people. So, yeah, I think Chris Godwin is awesome. I know Adam Humphries, I busted out his balls about Adam Humphries. Adam Humphries is obviously a really, really good play last week, will be again this week. I just think from a ceiling perspective, and that's where I went with the condom analogy. From a ceiling perspective, where's the most upside? If you like to live dangerously and go with a no condom strategy, that's Chris Godwin. If you want to go with the safe play, the 4 condom strategy, Al, which Al decided to go with last week, that was Adam Humphries.
Yeah, so Chris Raw Dog Godwin, if you really want to go with him, is fine. But, I prefer a floor to my players that I'm using in cash that's outside of anything else. Now, Godwin, obviously a good play. They're both priced up to basically the same amount. I think that they're very similar players with different possible outcomes. Obviously, Godwin has a larger gap between his floor and his ceiling, and Humphries a higher floor play. But with his usage inside the red zone, and again, over 18% target share when Winston has been the quarterback. Now, Winston is still throwing the ball a ton. The thing that interests me here, a lot of people want to just stuff in Saints players, and it's a little bit tough. One, from a pass catching point of view, they're not throwing the ball as much as they have since Ingram's come back. They're trying to run the ball a ton. 2, they're on the road. The Buccaneers, as bad as that defense has been somewhat respectable when they play at home. Still, as bad against the run at home as they are on the road, giving up 120 rush yards per game versus 122 when they're away. But they're much tougher against the pass, allowing only 18 points per game at home and 37.8 when they're on the road. They cause more turnovers when they're at home. Is that giving anybody any pause towards the Saints players? Or are you just going to say, you know what, this is just a bad defense. The Saints are as good as it gets. And I'm going to stuff in those role players. Well, not role. I'm going to stuff in the stud players like Ingram and Kamara and Thomas and Breeze, when I think there's probably other better spots. I want shares of all those guys in tournaments, but I don't know that I want them in cash because there's just easier paths to take this week at similar or cheaper price points.
I have conviction on Kamara, which is a shocker, I know. I think Kamara is a guy that, given how he plays on DraftKings, and yes, Ingram being back has hurt him, but his price has come down. And against this Tampa Bay defense, their linebackers have really been decimated by injuries, and I think that's a way the Saints will look to attack. I hope they, have a little bit of a different game plan after, having had such a pitiful performance against the Cowboys. I do love Godwin. I think Godwin's clearly the play. Lattimore should spend a lot of time on Mike Evans. I do think that you want to attack the Saints via the slot, so I have no problem with Humphries either. The question, though, we've seen some really big weeks, and this is still a huge total, even though it's come down 3 points. We've seen weeks where you can get away with playing both Ingram and Kamara. I think there's so much running back value that it's probably hard to justify that strategy. But I like Kamara. Adam, do you have a preference out of those 2 running backs?
Yeah, for sure. Kamara, I mean, the pass game role is elite. I think the whole key to this game and what Al asked about is how do you think Tampa Bay's offense will play? If you think Tampa Bay gets out to 7-0, 14-0 lead, if it's 7-7, if it's 21-17, then it's like Yahtzee for the Saints guys. I have no doubt that they'll be extremely efficient. The way that it goes ugly for Saints guys is if it's 10-0 Saints at the end of the first quarter and 14-3 Saints in the second quarter. Then you have some serious problems with Saints volume. They're going to run the ball a lot, and you're going to see, Michael Thomas has been at 8 or fewer targets in like 5 of the last 6 games or something, and he's 8,600. That's crazy. So, I agree with Al that it would be more tournament stuff for me. And I think if I was playing in tournaments, it wouldn't just be like random. It would be part of guys in Tampa, because that's how you get the Saints guys going with Bucs guys playing really well.
Jameis has been a little bit more efficient. He hasn't thrown any interceptions for 2 games. The he's due crowd is probably going to say that he's due to start throwing interceptions again here, but he's been pretty efficient. And as you said, they're running the ball a little bit more, and that defense is a little bit better at home. Albeit on the season, they're still the worst red zone team in the league, allowing touchdowns on over 85% of the trips that opponents take to the red zone. So yes, I'm not saying fade the Saints. And I do want to have Pete clarify, because I think that Pete was saying that it playing both Ingram and Kamara is not a viable strategy for cash this week. Although I do think that it is a viable strategy for tournaments, because I don't think a lot of that, I don't think that combo is going to be very highly owned combined because of the value that Pete said was out there at running back.
Exactly. No one's going to play them. And you go back to last year, tournament winning teams had both of them, and people just don't do that because they're negatively correlated. But Saints still right now have the highest implied team total. I think they're going to run efficiently. I think Kamara in particular is just going to have a great game. And Ingram, if they're up, like Adam said, that he could see the ball a ton in the second half. The Yahtzee scenario, though, is Tampa Bay gets out to an early lead and the Saints are chasing a little bit or in a neutral game script. Breeze also is really good. Jameis, I think, is fine. Quarterback is challenging with the narrow range of pricing. Let's go to the Patriots at Dolphins, Adam. What are the news and notes here?
Some small injuries. Danny Amendola banged up. If he misses again, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker project to see a large target share. I think one notable thing is Xavier Howard not expected to play for the Dolphins. In theory, that helps Josh Gordon. But, you can make a pretty good case this should be a run-heavy game plan out of the Patriots. We saw Rex Burkhead get back last week and kind of rotate in behind both Sony Michel and James White. Sony Michel is playing the old LeGarrette Blount role just with more explosion. Like, Sony Michel runs like 3 routes per game, which is just crazy. He goes in, he plays 30 snaps, he gets 20 carries, and he runs 3 routes. Like, that's the LeGarrette Blount role. So if you think New England smashes here, would be a good spot for Sony Michel, but a lot of risk with that because you're trying to project game flow, which is always difficult. And then I also wanted to make a note, Al. It just stands out that Rob Gronkowski is 4,800. I don't want to be on Team Watch the Tape. I've read some sharp people who are on Team Watch the Tape and said that it's very noticeable to them. People have watched Patriots a long time, that Rob Gronkowski, just like his athleticism, his ability after the catch, his ability to break tackles, just completely sapped. So maybe this is the spot where he breaks out. I don't know. At 4,800, it's certainly intriguing, but I think the injuries have really taken their toll, and he's more of a just middle of the road tight end, just like all the rest of these guys now in the pass game.
Right, but he's priced like one now. That's the difference. You're not paying 65, 66, or 6,900 to get Gronk on your team anymore. You're paying 4,800 in the hopes that he gets a bunch of red zone targets. He's not going to get 7, 8, 10 targets anymore. But if he gets, 6 targets, 3 of them are red zone and 2 of them end up being touchdowns, because he still can catch the ball in traffic, as we saw 2 weeks ago. That touchdown catch that he ended up with was a tremendous catch in traffic, very contested, and he can still come down with it because he's great at boxing out. Those things just don't go away. I agree with you that the explosiveness might be gone. The athleticism is coming back down to earth. Injuries take a toll, man. Football's a tough sport, but he can still catch the ball very well in traffic. Still a massive red zone target with one of the best quarterbacks in the league still, even though he's having a down year in Tom Brady.
Al, are you proud of Adam for using routes instead of routes?
Like 5 times, dude.
He did it over and over again.
Well done.
The problem is, I wanted to say routes, but once I said routes the first time, I don't want to flip-flop. But according
you want to go routes and then routes? You don't want to say...
Yeah, I didn't want to do that, but I just want to let the people know, according to Oxford, who is the foremost authority on language in civilization, you can say either one.
Okay, well, what does Webster have to say? Because I'm sure there might be a conflicting view here. Can we consult Mr. Webster and his dictionary?
I ride or die with Oxford.
Oxford's the cash game play for you?
Yeah, there's a ton of value. I think Gronk is probably going to be the most heavily owned player in this game. Maybe. I mean, I guess there's other options at tight end, but he does stand out from a price perspective. He's hobbling around. There's certainly risk that he gets injured during the game. They're definitely being cautious. They want him healthy for the playoffs, or at least as healthy as he can be at this stage of his career. But he has a lot of touchdown equity. Tom Brady's still going to look to him. He's a big body. So I think he's the guy. Burkhead coming back really makes it tough to play one of these Patriots running backs. Josh Gordon, I think, is nice in tournaments, and maybe you take a shot on someone like Kenny Stills, but there's better spots, divisional game. I just think that you can safely kind of move past this game. It's a middling total, and it's tough to project these Patriot players. Let's go to the Ravens at Chiefs, though, Adam. And we've talked about it on this podcast, and I wish I would have listened to Al. I mean, if you just jam in the Chiefs every single week, you're making money this season. But now they face the best defense, who just shut down the Falcons in Atlanta. Can the Ravens slow down this amazing Chiefs offense?
Yeah, good question. First of all, Lamar Jackson's going to start again. Obviously, his toughest spot to date going into Arrowhead. I know people think the Chiefs have like the worst defense ever. Their front seven, I think, has improved. And at Kansas City in Arrowhead, they just don't give up a lot of points. So I have some doubts about Lamar Jackson here. Other injury note, Sammy Watkins on track to return from his foot injury, would kick Chris Conley back to the bench. But yeah, as Pete mentioned, I mean, Baltimore has the best pass defense by almost every available metric in the league. Kansas City has the best pass offense by almost every available metric in the league. Given today's rules, given the way the game is played now, given the way the game is officiated now, it's almost certainly an advantage towards the offense. So I would not shy away from Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek, and Tyreek ownership and price to both be down this week in a big way. I would not shy away from those guys. I think there's some risk that this Baltimore defense does give them problems, but overall, Al, I think Kansas City their offense is just too good given today's rules for anybody to really stop them.
I mean, Kelsey's essentially a wide receiver, being like, if you combined wide receiver and tight end, he'd be like the wide receiver 6 on the season. Among all those pass catchers, he only trails like Keenan Allen and Julio Jones in percentage of routes that turn into a target at like 29.2%. And here's the difference, right? The Ravens are a very good defense, but if they do have one inefficiency, it's at stopping teams of completing passes to their tight ends. So they allow 57% or 57.7% of pass attempts to be completed to wide receivers, but 70.8% to be completed to tight ends. If you had to pick between Tyreek Hill on the outside or Travis Kelce on the inside, and you wanted to stack one of those guys with Mahomes, I'm going to go with Kelce to Mahomes. But really, the bottom line is, I don't care who the defense is. Do not fade the Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Wow. Defense doesn't matter, Al?
Defense doesn't matter.
That was nice. Nice little prop there. I mean, Mahomes is ridiculous. It was tilting last week that he missed Tyreek Hill. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but I believe 5 times.
One
where it was like
right
a wide open touchdown. I didn't even get to do Ty Freak, CC Adam Levitan. It was tilting just all get out.
Yeah. Hey, you didn't get to tweet and you spend 9,100 for 6 targets. Good game.
Why didn't you do Ty Fluke, CC, and go after me? I could use the nice.
No, he was too busy subtweeting me.
I take the high road on the Tyreek stuff because it's so likely. Like this week, I think is a great week to play Tyreek because recency bias, his price is down, his ownership will be down. Like matchup is obviously difficult. Like this would be like playing Tyreek 9,100. I talked about it in the solo pod, but 9,100 at 20%, I think is pretty egregious. Now he will be 8K at like 10%. It's just totally different.
I would appreciate 10%.
I
think he'll just be 15 to 20 every single week because of that offense.
Maybe. Yeah, you might be right. I got to go through it closer, but yeah, you might be right.
Adam, in the future, please just directly tweet at me. I could use the following bump from the kid, so thank you for that. Kelsey's a great play. I think there's a ton of value. We can certainly go to him. Watkins coming back, it always makes me nervous when someone's been battling a foot injury. We saw that last week with AJ Green. He's probably a decent GPP play if he can stay healthy, given that his ownership will be way down with all the value that we have at receiver. And I think a lot of people are going to be spending up at least in one spot, probably 2 for these top end guys. So you can get Watkins at like probably 1-2%, and he certainly has flashed a ceiling. And the Ravens probably are going to game plan to try to take away Tyreek and Kelsey. So I like all those guys. I'm with you on the Ravens players. I think it's really hard to go into Kansas City. One other line movement note here. This did cross a key number for the Ravens. Started out as 7.5 to 8-point dogs. Now they're 6.5-point dogs. So that is some sharp money coming in, most likely on the Ravens here. Again, we're recording here on Thursday afternoon, but a line to monitor as well as the total. Any final thoughts, either of you guys?
Do you think that has to do with the fact that with Lamar Jackson, they're basically running time of possession like the Dallas Cowboys did 3 seasons ago? Obviously, with Joe Flacco there, they throw the ball as much the past 2 or 3 years as any other team in the league. I think 2 years ago, they led the league in pass attempts. So if you're going to lead the league in pass attempts, the Ravens I'm speaking of, obviously you're not going to have the ball as much because the clock is going to stop on every single incompletion. Now, at the end of every play, they're just running the ball every play, whether it's Lamar running the ball or handing it off to the Gus Bus. The clock is continually running, so therefore they're just dominating time of possession in Lamar Jackson starts. Do you think that that's why? That's a risk, at least for me, for the Chiefs offense, at least if there is a risk. As much as the defense, they may not have as much exposure to the ball on offense. They can score on any play, but seriously, they may have the ball less this week than on other weeks.
I think it's a really big concern. And for tournaments, everyone knows I'm a huge proponent of game stacks. Like, who do you stack here? I mean, you want to play Mahomes and the pass catchers, but the only person who's really viable on the Ravens is Lamar Jackson, maybe Gus Bus, but there's so many other good running backs. Makes it really challenging. I think that is a factor that lowers Kansas City's ceiling here, given that the Ravens should be trying to hog the ball. And, if they're not successful, like, are the Chiefs just going to be throwing a ton in the fourth quarter if they're up a couple touchdowns? I don't know. So
what about Ravens defense in a GPP?
Ravens defense with Mahomes on the other side?
Yeah, he does. He is young and has a propensity to throw some interceptions from time to time against a team that can't force
throwing across his body.
Any quarterback to do that. Yeah, they could end up with a pick 6 here for 2,200. I'm not saying they're going to dominate and get a shutout. Obviously, points against is going to be a thing, but they can get multiple sacks. They can cause turnovers, and anytime you can do that, you can score a defensive touchdown. For 2,200, albeit on the road, I don't think it's a horrible GPP play. Nowhere near my cash game lineup, though.
I like it, and I should reference. You should play, or should at least consider, a little double dip with Chiefs defense and Tyreek Hill. That is a good play. All right, Colts at Texans, Adam. What are the news and notes, and can anyone slow down this Texans team?
Yeah, well, this is one of my favorite games. And I think, if you look at box scores for Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, it's not impressive at all. Only 24.5 attempts per game in the last 7 for Deshaun Watson. They've faced the Bills, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, the Broncos, the Redskins, the Titans, and the Browns in that span. Like, it's not surprising that they were not forced into being more aggressive, throwing the ball more. Now, against Andrew Luck in this huge divisional game, very, very likely be forced into more attempts. I think we could see Deshaun Watson push towards 35 attempts here in ideal conditions. To me, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins are both really, really awesome plays. Indy's pass defense looks good lately. They haven't faced anyone either. I think they're going to get tested in a big way by DeAndre Hopkins. Could get Kiki Kute back as well. And then on the other side of the ball, Al, I think T.Y. Hilton's volume has been up in a big way, over almost 10 targets per game over the last month. And Eric Ebron, 16 targets for Eric Ebron last week, ran a route on 47 of Andrew Luck's 57 dropbacks. Like, the way Ebron being used is awesome. His price now is 5,700, which is obviously moving towards the appropriate range, but I don't think Eric Ebron is out of play. And to me, T.Y. Hilton, I know everybody, Keenan Allen will be way more popular. For 1,100 less, I think the ceiling on T.Y. Hilton is probably higher than on Keenan Allen. So I like a lot here.
I think they have the same ceiling. I think that Allen has a higher floor.
Yeah.
But you're that's priced in, so I don't see a problem with either. Personally.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Keenan Allen had 40 points on Sunday night or whatever, right? He needed 19 targets to get there. Ty can get there on 8 targets,
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing. My thing is, I don't think Eric Ebron's priced high enough yet. I think with the injuries that they have there, I think that he is in Zach Ertz territory. Needs to be about 6,200. I still think that he's a little bit too cheap here. My question is, of those 3 elite tight ends, and yes, Eric Ebron in this offense, the way he's being utilized with no Jack Doyle, is an elite fantasy tight end. Do you prefer Eric Ebron, Zach Ertz, or Travis Kelce?
Yeah. So there are price differences, but it's so brutal to try to parse through them. I think that they're priced pretty right? Like Kelsey's probably the best, but he's the most expensive. Ertz is probably the middle, but he's the second most expensive, and Ebron's the cheapest.
We'll get to the Eagles game. I love the volume that Ertz is seeing, but this is a tough matchup. I mean, the Cowboys' strength is the speed they have at linebacker. The Eagles find a way to get the ball to Ertz, and he's I think he's going to go down as one of the best tight ends. But God leads the ball to Ertz through the Bible narrative, bud. Don't you know? Don't discount the chemistry that Ertz and Wentz have. Did you see, by the way, Nelson Aguilar, they're praying and Nelson Aguilar was dancing around? Yeah. Also, in the man's video, he talked about the Bible narrative. He said like Book of Galatians or something like that. All right. Let's keep this on the rails here just a little bit. I'm with you, Al. I think Ebron's way too cheap. Tried to get a little sneaky in our four-man by going to Lacoste. That was a pretty big mistake. Fading Ebron. Professional DFS player CSU Ram 88 playing Lacoste over Ebron at 4,200. He has games posted to 10K. How are you not selling those? You play Lacoste. Is this a ploy? You play Lacoste over Ebron so that you sell more action the next week? Is that a play? It's advertising. It's why I used to show a massive bluff in the first level of every tournament that I ever play. It's like, well, I didn't have it. And then they just think you never have it the rest of the year. Pete's going to be just raking it in weeks 14 through the end of the divisional round. I needed to do something. I did have a ton of Ebron across the industry. I'll tell you that. He was in the majority of my cash games, but wow, what a big mistake that was. Agree with you on T.Y. Hilton. DeAndre Hopkins to me is a major priority. I think he gets going, and we're not concerned about Ebron's health or DeAndre Hopkins' health. I know they both have questionable tags right now, but Adam, are you concerned about either? I mean, they're just banged up, but they've been missing practice and limited in practice early in the week for most of the year. So yeah, I don't think they're 100%, but I think they're fine.
It's week 14. Everybody's banged up in the NFL.
Marlon Mack will be low owned. I'm intrigued by him just a little bit. He's a talented player coming off a tough matchup. Now faces the Texans, which, I think the one thing the Colts have done extremely well this year is obviously protecting Andrew Luck with that offensive line. One other way they can try to protect him against, this front of the Texans is establishing some run and some balance. So I think Marlon Mack will have an opportunity, probably not on Lamar Miller, but I'm with you. This is one of the best games to stack, and we'll see if there's any weather this week, but this game's obviously indoors. Al, any final thoughts on this game?
No, I think we nailed every part of it.
All right, let's go to the Falcons at Packers. You referenced you're a little concerned about Julio, Adam. What are the news and notes?
Yeah, Team Watch the Games let me know that Julio seemed to have a hand issue for much of last week and also a foot issue, and he missed practice on Wednesday, missed practice on Thursday with this foot issue, also going outside, expected to be very cold, and honestly, expect an inspired performance. I don't think the team liked Mike McCarthy that much, kind of expect an inspired performance out of this Packers team. So yeah, I mean, out of everything we have at the top, at running back and wide receiver, Julio would not be a priority for me this week, and that's always dangerous. Like Julio is just the man. I love him, but it is what it is. In terms of what are priorities, I think Aaron Rodgers at 6K stands out. We know what's going to happen here. Like McCarthy's gone. Aaron Rodgers hated him. Now Rodgers is going to be like, I'm going to show you what I can do without McCarthy limiting him. I expect Aaron Rodgers to be the guy like calling the plays, audibling a ton at the line of scrimmage, and when he does, going to his main man. Devontae Adams, obviously the Falcons an atrocious defense, 28th in yards per play allowed this season. So I think Devontae Adams is an awesome play. I think Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Jameis Winston, all these guys are strong plays at quarterback in the 6K range. So I think it's a pretty good spot for the Packers as a whole. And obviously the subtraction of Mike McCarthy, Al, to me is a positive.
I mean, you even had former players dunking on McCarthy, like Jeff Saturday was saying. Like he'd send plays in, and the whole huddle would just deflate. So if Rodgers is going to be calling the plays, at least they're going to be more aggressive. If they are going to be more aggressive, everybody's going to be on Aaron Jones in this matchup. And I think that Devontae Adams needs to get at least some bit of love. This guy does nothing but catch touchdown passes. A touchdown or 8+ catches in 11 of his 12 games this season. And now Aaron Rodgers gets to call the shots. You know he's just going to keep feeding his favorite target, as he has all the time throughout the past 5, 6, 7 years. His wide receiver one always feasts. Atlanta ranks dead last in terms of pressure percentage this year at 23%. when Rodgers isn't pressured, I think Adams gets like over 29% of the team's market share of targets, 29% reception share, 32% of the receiving yards. Obviously, Aaron Jones is the obvious play. I'm just saying don't ignore Devontae.
Yeah, actually, if you like Aaron Jones, I don't think he'll be that owned based on how bad he boned everybody last week. And maybe it was a McCarthy thing.
Well, it wasn't him, though. He did well when he was in.
No,
it was a usage issue.
I got you, but have you seen Joe Philbin? Like, are we sure that he's not going to play Jamal Williams too? Like,
I mean, that's always the problem with coaching changes mid-season is that like we think we know what should happen, but like we don't know who these coaches are and what they're going to do. But we have seen Philbin on Hard Knocks at least.
Yeah. What about the flow chart with the running backs versus this Falcons defense?
What I'm saying.
I don't think we need to pull down the flow chart. Come on, Adam.
What my point is that people, i.e. me, got screwed last week because I didn't play Gurley because I thought Aaron Jones was super safe for 90% of the snaps, and he played 50% of the snaps. So I don't think, and his price went up from 6,900 to 7,200. And I think it's going to be major stars and scrubs for people at the running back position, given the value that we're about to talk about at the 4:00 games. So yeah, if you like Aaron Jones, and I agree with you, Al, Aaron Jones should be an awesome play. I don't think he'll be nearly as owned as you think.
What do you think his percentage is going to be this week?
Maybe like
I'm trying to find
10, 8.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to have like more than the field.
I want to stack this game. Julio is concerning me a little bit, and I'd say he has one additional problem outside of the hand and the foot. He has a big Matt Ryan issue who can't seem to throw the ball down the field. I mean, Matt Ryan's arm strength has been a big concern. I mean, Julio Jones did struggle last week and was beat up, but he was wide open down the field a couple times, and Matt Ryan made just some egregious throws. Now he's going indoors. Like, you see him in the preseason doing all these drills to like loosen up his shoulder. He just doesn't have it. And we're about to talk about another quarterback who has a shoulder issue as well. So that's a little bit of a concern for me with the Falcons side, but I love the Packers here. I'm with you, Adam. I think they play inspired. I think Aaron Rodgers has a great game. I like Aaron Jones. I like Devontae Adams. Maybe even MVS can get going. We wanted him to be a thing for a long time, and he's struggled, but maybe he finally gets it going. I think he has a big ceiling and should come in really low owned. Aaron Rodgers is also a quarterback in tournaments that you feel really comfortable using two pass catchers with. I mean, his big games, he's going to throw for 4 touchdowns and over 300 yards, and hopefully that comes through a couple guys. Let's go to the Panthers at Browns. I just referenced the shoulder issue. I saw the same thing watching the game. Cam Newton came out when they needed to throw a Hail Mary. Mm-hmm. That's certainly a concern. And now going into Cleveland, who I think this game is interesting. What are the news and notes here, Adam?
Yeah, I'm worried about Cam's shoulder. Did not look right throwing the football last week. I saw some people referring to it as like he was kind of shot putting the ball. And that's certainly good for Christian McCaffrey, right? Like anytime Cam Newton is afraid to throw the ball down the field, that's good for Christian McCaffrey. At 9,300, Christian McCaffrey better be getting 8-9 targets like he has been getting, and he certainly could in this spot. It kind of fits into the way that Cleveland's defense played. Yeah, I think Cleveland has a pretty good chance to play well here. I mean, so much talent on defense. I think that I'm worried about the Panthers as a whole. One guy I'm interested in, but I'm concerned about is Curtis Samuel. Devin Funchess was limited last week with his back issue, not on the injury report this week. I hope that the Panthers continue to play Curtis Samuel ahead of Devin Funchess. I'm not convinced that they will, so that's something that I'll be tracking. Other injury news, Greg Olsen is out. Ian Thomas, who's a talented guy, will start and probably play almost every snap at tight end. So he could be somebody in a tournament that could be kind of a punt. And then also, Al, something nobody's talking about this week. I mean, Nick Chubb is so likely to get 20 carries and has seen a little bit of a bump in the past games. So I think Nick Chubb is at least interesting as well on the other side.
I mean, we'll have to go to Pete for all the Chubb information.
I do love Chubb.
I don't care. We're done. Anyway, as always, everybody's going to try and play Jarvis Landry once again at 5,800. Will he have another 100-yard game? Look, he hasn't been horrible, but he hasn't been great. You know, like, he just keeps getting the ball thrown his way. At least last week, he caught 6 balls of the 9 that were thrown his way. Can we count on that sort of usage again? I don't know. I agree with you about Nick Chubb that he should get his usage back playing at home. Carolina, my issue here is obviously Cam's shoulder. I don't have a problem with McCaffrey. I really don't. I think he can get there on 6 targets. I really believe that he can. So if you're talking about a floor of 6 targets and a ceiling of 10 or 12, regardless of what Cam's shoulder issues may be, I'm fine with it. If you need Curtis Samuel for salary relief as a last man into a lineup, I don't hate it, but for the reasons that Adam said, I agree. There is some volume of snap issues that might be a problem there. Very explosive, however, as explosive and as speedy as he is, they get him the ball around the line of scrimmage. So if Cam does have shoulder issues, just dumping it to him on bubble screens, jailbreak screens, whatever, he can make a play happen out of those sort of situations without having to catch a 50 or 60-yard bomb way down the field.
Chris McCaffrey, I mean, would you guys have thought we'd see a point where he's 500 more than Todd Gurley? I mean, you go back and look at Todd Gurley's game log. I mean, his worst performance in like the first 7 or 8 weeks was 25.6 DK points, was consistently over 30. And we had some concerns about Christian McCaffrey. Now the volume's been there, and this is clearly a better matchup, but man, 500 more than Todd Gurley gives me a little bit of pause. He's also 1,200 more than Alvin Kamara, who I really, really like. We talked about Barkley. We'll get to Ezekiel Elliott. So there is a lot of opportunity costs going all the way up to Christian McCaffrey, even though, the plus side, he is the perfect type of DraftKings player. And if Cam Newton's going to have to check it down more with his shoulder, that is an encouraging sign. On the Brown side, I think Chubb is a great play. Like you guys talked about, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. He's going to be low owned. I'm not on Jarvis Landry. That guy has cost me more money than Amari Cooper or Tevin Coleman this year, so screw him. And the other guy that I think we should reference is Callaway. A knucklehead off the field, clearly makes mistakes on the field as well. Needs to get smarter, on and off the field overall. But he's shown elite athleticism, and he has big play potential. Carolina's defense has not been good. So he's someone who will come in really low owned. Any opinion on him, Adam?
And before I go there, I should know professional DFS player Peter Jennings. Todd Gurley is not on this slate, so we don't have to worry about it.
I have him up here in my freaking Happy Thursday through Monday slate. Oh.
Anyways, yeah. The thing for me
has that happened this year yet? I've done that historically quite a bit, but have I done it this year?
No, I mean, I've messed up and talked about guys playing at home when they're actually playing in London a bunch. So yeah, it is what it is.
They are the home team though when they're playing in London.
On the Thursday through Monday slate, since that's so relevant, what do you think about Christian McCaffrey versus Todd?
For all 200 of you who are playing the Thursday through Monday slate, Baker spreads the ball around so much, and that's been, kind of the issue that's helped me get off Landry. I haven't played Landry in a long time. I mean, he's liable to target 9 different guys in a game, and I think that concerns me with Callaway too. But I think the ceiling is always going to be there with Njoku, Callaway, guys like this. It's just the floor is so low, and that concerns me.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the afternoon games where you definitely want to make sure you have a lot of flexibility with your rosters. There's a ton of value. And don't screw up the late swap situation. First game, we have the Broncos at 49ers. It's just devastating. Emmanuel Sanders ruptures his Achilles. People are like, oh, they need to test it. When you rupture your Achilles, there's a quick test. It takes like 2 seconds to figure out if you did it. Brutal for the Broncos, who also lost Chris Harris, which is probably bigger news for them as a football team trying to make the playoffs. He did say he's going to target trying to get back in the playoffs. I have no idea how you come back from a broken leg that quickly. But Adam, additional news and notes. Is it Cortland Sutton time?
Well, first of all, I mean, not only have the Broncos lost Manny Sanders, they traded away Demaryius Thomas. They lost Jeff Hireman. Like, they're getting really, really thin. Their quarterback is Case Keenum. They're on the road. So I'm hesitant to be like, hey, let's slam in Cortland Sutton 100%. This is not the kind of guy that I think is a load-bearing wideout. Do I think his target floor has increased significantly? Yeah. I think his route tree is not one that replaces Emmanuel Sanders' route tree by any stretch, right? So, yeah, I think Cortland Sutton's an awesome play for sure. I would be tempted to fade him in tournaments based on the projected ownership, based on how much he will likely see Richard Sherman, based on Case Keenum going on the road, based on kind of what we've seen with Kenny Golladay, where when the defense can focus on one guy, it's easy to take him out. I'm curious, Pete, though, your take on the other guys Or, I mean, your take on Sutton too, but what is the word in Denver on Deshaun Hamilton, who I expect to start, and Tim Patrick, who I expect to be the number 3 wideout?
Well, if you're ever going to use root and tree go pretty well together there, Adam. So instead of route tree, going to use root there. The Broncos pass catchers, and the cost certainly gets a little bit of a bump.
Oh, God.
That worked out last week. Hamilton's someone I've wanted them to play more. Hamilton's the guy that I think gets the biggest benefit. It is concerning. Richard Sherman, amazing. Talk about an Achilles injury. He's playing extremely well. I thought his career was going to be over coming off that injury, but he's had an incredible season. I expect Sutton to see the most of him. So that is a knockdown. Hamilton, to me, is probably the best tournament play. Patrick's nice. I mean, I think he's a below average slot receiver, but he should see opportunity. The guy in the Broncos, though, that you definitely need exposure to is Philip Lindsay, Al. Just ridiculous efficiency this season, and it makes sense. He is a very fast runner, and he's been getting pretty nice holds. I believe he's leading the league in rushing before contact. So he's a guy that I think has a big ceiling. The downside with Lindsay, and what I was excited about before this Manny Sanders injury, was attacking the 49ers through the air. They've been a lot better as a rush defense than a pass defense. So Philip Lindsay stands out to me, just given his efficiency, but I definitely want to attack the 49ers through the air. So as an unbiased person, how are you unpacking this game?
I mean, this is the problem. We don't know what's going to happen on the outside. I think that Cortland Sutton is going to be the obvious chalk at wide receiver at 4,500. He's going to play basically all of the snaps. Deshaun is the one that they've said is going to be starting on the outside at 3K. I mean, how much do you really need out of him? Right? If he has like 4 catches for 50 yards, he's essentially there for the stone minimum, as Adam would say. Philip Lindsay is somebody who hasn't seen very much inclusion in the pass game the last 2 weeks, with 1 target over the last 2 games. And they've really just been pounding him on the ground because they've found ways to scheme to get him active. I think that Freeman sees a little bit bigger role on the team. I think that Lindsay goes back to getting like between 4 and 6 targets in the pass game, because they're going to have to move the ball and create different ways to do it without as much talent as they had on the outside before, or even in the slot, with Emmanuel Sanders gone and Demaryius Thomas, or the corpse of Demaryius Thomas, not there anymore. I think Philip Lindsay gets more usage in the passing game. He probably doesn't see 19 carries, probably about 12 to 15, probably 4 or 5 targets. At 6,300, I don't think he's too expensive. I think that the way that the meta for cash game lineups and roster construction is going to be this week, I think he gets overlooked for cash games because of the stars and scrubs approach that most people are going to be taking. I love him for tournaments this week. I loved him for tournaments last week. I think that his outlook is even better now, because even last week, as efficient as he's been, a big chunk of his performance came through on a 65-yard touchdown run. He still was having a good day, but it became a smash fest once he broke that long touchdown. Now, with more inclusion in the pass game, or projected more inclusion in the pass game, he has a much better floor moving forward, and still that same ridiculous ceiling because of his ability to break long runs.
Yeah, that was incredible, that long run. Adam, we have to get to the other big news here. Jeffrey Wilson is going to be major chalk at his price, given the running back news for San Francisco.
Yeah, Matt Breida hurt his ankle in warm-ups and then tweaked it again during the game. Only lasted 10 snaps. They did not have Alfred Morris active. I would expect Alfred Morris to be active for this game, but it seems like he's fallen out of favor and fallen behind Jeff Wilson and Matt Days. There's always risk with Kyle Shanahan that he's going to be like, hey, Alfred, go ahead, get in there and get a share of the early down work. But even if he gets a share of the early down work, we saw Jeff Wilson play really well in the pass game last week, and that's what gives me encouragement about playing Jeff Wilson, is how well he played in the pass game last week at 3,800, even if he only gets 50 to 60% of the early down work and then a majority of the third down work and pass down work. Well, that's pretty good for 3,800. So yeah, I think there's decisions to be made between Jeff Wilson and Jalen Samuels. I think a lot of people are going to play them both. But yeah, I don't think anybody would argue that, given what Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers have been able to do with running backs, Breida, Mostert, Jeff Wilson, all these guys, like, it doesn't really matter. They're likely to be productive.
There's another one too. There's 3 super high value running backs at sub 4K prices. Yeah,
we should get to that game next. Yeah.
Before we get to that game, and I know you're ready to move, Adam, and we'll be quick on the other games. One other play that I love for tournaments this week that I think has a smash ceiling is Marquise Goodwin coming back for personal reasons. The Broncos now are really thin in the secondary. Harris was just like, okay, we can put him on someone. No, he's not going to get open, and we can kind of scheme to take other options away. Now they're in trouble. So obviously the concern is Nick Mullins, a quarterback, but Marquise Goodwin, elite speed, could be a tournament-winning play on this slate. Let's move on to the Bengals at Chargers. Al, you just referenced the other big running back situation with news. Adam, what's the status of Melvin Gordon, and how are you handling Eckler and Justin Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers have big aspirations. I'd be surprised if Melvin Gordon was rushed back for a home game against Jeff Driscoll and the Bengals. I'd be shocked. So Austin Eckler, to me, I thought when Melvin Gordon went down, it was like a total smash for Austin Eckler. Like, he was going to be one of the best running backs in the league. His efficiency on a per-touch basis behind Melvin Gordon was just out of this world. Awesome skill set for full PPR scoring, et cetera, et cetera. You saw him struggle on national TV, and Justin Jackson play so well last week. In the wake of that game, Anthony Lynn was asked, what's going on with Austin Eckler? He says Austin Eckler's played a lot of running back for us. He's played a lot of special teams. He's wearing down a little bit. We're going to continue to, use Justin Jackson. Making a projection between Eckler and Justin Jackson this week, I think, is one of the keys to the slate. I'm tempted to think that it'll be like 65-35, and maybe that's optimistic on Eckler's way. It's tough for me to say, but either way, it's an awesome matchup. I mean, Bengals are allowing the most yards per game, like a historical amount of yards per game. So we'll see. It sounds like Al is more interested in Justin Jackson. I'm holding out hope for Eckler, but I might just be biased because I've liked him for a long time.
Jackson's third to me out of the three value running backs. I think he's clearly behind Wilson and clearly behind Jalen Samuels. But I think he's in play for the reasons that you said. Now, from a team perspective, as you said, they utilize Eckler in a lot of different ways on this team. And as much as I want to believe that it's going to be Eckler 60% and Jackson 40%, I think Jackson still has value at 40%, partially because of the job and partially because of the matchup. But I think ideally for the Chargers, and we don't always get into the actual football of the game, it would probably be better for the Chargers to run Jackson as the lead role, as the lead dog, the early down guy, and then leave Eckler in his role and expand that role a little bit as the 40% guy. It would probably fit better with both of their skill sets, even though Jackson is nowhere near MG3. I'm not saying go like 90-10 the way it was before, but if you go 60-40 with Jackson as the lead guy, I think it makes more sense for the Chargers roster and the skill sets of both running backs. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do that, but I think that is a possible upside scenario for Jackson, even though it probably isn't going to happen this week. But the smash play in this game, with all the talk about the two kind of average, mediocre running backs, is Keenan freaking Allen. Since the London fiasco, where he threw a temper tantrum, as Adam has said, Week 1 through 9, he had 1 touchdown reception. Weeks 10 through 13, 4 touchdown receptions, leading the league over that span. 42 catches, also leading the league over that span. 19 targets last week. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he doesn't see 19 targets again here in Week 14, but 10 plus, definitely not out of the realm of possibility, considering that they're missing their best offensive weapon. And Phillip Rivers against this defense should feast as well. I love the Rivers to Allen combo.
Yeah, I've played that a lot this year, and fortunately, Keenan Allen was a big bailout last week, and all the contests that included Sunday night had him 100%. But the concern, and I boast about that. I've been burned by playing Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen a lot this year. Allen's come through, but a lot of these games where the Chargers are big favorites, Rivers starts off hot and like, ooh, I have all this PMR and I'm about to make a charge to win all this money. And then the second half happens and it's an utter disaster. And that's
second half happens and they hand it to Melvin Gordon.
Exactly. Or, what we've seen in the past too is, Austin Eckler go off in the second half, these gadget guys. I'm with you on Keenan Allen, though. I'll prioritize him in cash. Just too big of a role, too cheap. I think Jackson's interesting. I think Eckler's interesting. Surprised you didn't reference Tyrell the Gazelle, Al.
I mean, he seems to be a three-legged gazelle right now. It's kind of.
Why don't you? Maybe we can't. Maybe we can't.
Why don't you invite him over for dinner? And
that's what I was going to say.
Up? What? Like, give him some Tylenol, pour some Tussin on it? What do you want me to do?
You can have a nice home-cooked meal.
I could do that.
Show him the gift.
The invite is out. Look, Terrell, if you want to come over to our house for dinner, you're invited. Come over for dinner sometime this week. My wife's a tremendous cook. We'll have maybe some fajitas, and maybe that'll help heal your injury problems.
What I was going to say is you get your old friend Tyrell on the horn and you ask him what the running back share is going to be between Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson.
There you go.
Mike Williams, I will point out, is not hurt. He is balling. And Mike Williams is going to have some really big games. We've already seen his ceiling. Probably not the spot to do it considering the game flow. I want to take him more in like these shootout type spots like last week. And the one play that I think is really sneaky that has big upside in garbage time is Giovanni Bernard. Saw 8 targets last week. This is a game where if you just look at the spread, Chargers are expected to, win this game pretty easily. And if it's garbage time, Gio at 4K is a great pivot from all those other guys. And someone you should look to if you're down and you're losing to your opponents, that's someone that you could look to as a swap in your contest. All right.
Antonio Gates is 100% catching a touchdown this week.
Oh, God. Let me just quickly on the Mike Williams Tyrell stuff. I would note that Travis Benjamin and Mike Williams are sharing time, and Tyrell continues to play a full-time role. So if I was going to go with any of those, it'd probably still be Tyrell just from a playing time perspective. But yeah, Mike Williams is, I think, pretty clearly the best talent out of those. And yeah.
That's a high draft pick in him. But yeah. Benjamin had that long touchdown last week, so that is concerning.
Yeah.
All right. Lions at Cardinals. We're going long. I know there's some other things going on here. So Adam, news and notes. We might want to use that whole pass reference here for.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions are just, think about what the Lions have on offense. Kerryon Johnson, I expected to play again. Patrick Peterson likely on Galladay. So, Bruce Ellington, TJ Jones, LeGarrette Blount, Theo Riddick, they're just, so easy to defend. I'm shocked that the Lions are favored on the road in this game. Other injury news, Christian Kirk is done for the year. If you think the Cardinals play well and win the game, I'm not sure they'll still score a lot of points, but I guess it'll go through David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald. But, I'm not excited to play those guys either, so I might be considering a pass here, Al.
David Johnson in both defenses, basically the only thing that I'm considering. Cardinals defense at 2,300, Lions defense at 2,900, and give me some DFJ.
Larry Fitzgerald ended Mike McCarthy's year by converting that long 3rd and 23. Also crushed my hopes in a survivor where it took the Packers. That was absolutely devastating. We can move on to the Steelers at Raiders. Big news here with Connor being out. Probably the chalkiest play on the slate is going to end up being Jalen Samuels. And there's definitely a lot of different opinions out there in Twitter. Adam, you've given a couple of points I think are really sharp here. Additional news and notes and your thoughts on Samuels.
Yeah, James Conner already been ruled out. So I think it's important to think about it. The Steelers offense as in their context of a whole, they have been the most pass-heavy team in the entire league over the last 6 weeks in neutral situations. Nobody throws more. Nobody's game plan is to throw more than the Steelers right now. That fits perfectly with Jalen Samuels' skill set. I don't think Jalen Samuels is going to carry the ball more than 10 times in this game. I do think that he will be targeted 5, 6, 7 times. So once you start saying 8 to 10 carries and 6, 7 targets, well, now we're talking at 3,700. It's really hard for him to fail. So unlike some of these other running backs we've had, Spencer Ware only saw 1 target last week. Jalen Samuels' role in the pass game, he caught 160 balls in his last 39 games at NC State. That's what he does. He plays tight end. If you guys remember, I know you guys do, but you guys out there remember Marcel Reese. He reminds of Marcel Reese. I believe that's his most favorable comp on Player Profiler. So Jalen Samuels to me might only touch the ball 14 times or something, but if 4 or 5 of those are catches, then we have a slam dunk. The rest of the carries and the kind of the boring work, I think, will go to Stephen Ridley out.
Yeah, and that's kind of my issue here is people, Samuel's just going to step into this Connor role, and I don't think he's going to.
No.
I think this is a Roethlisberger and all his pass catchers sort of game. I would love to go contrarian with Antonio Brown here with as pricey as he is. You can go with Juju Smith-Schuster as well. Oakland's allowing opponents to complete 52.6% of their deep passes this year, which is the 4th worst in the league, allowing a touchdown pass on 8.4% of attempts. No other defense is over 7%. And now you have Roethlisberger throwing the ball over 45 times for the last 3 games. This is a recipe for disaster. McDonald's in play for me. Brown's in play for me. I could see stacking up this pass offense and fading Samuels for tournaments to just get off of all the ownership and just say, you know what, I'm going with the guys that are, tried and true that can really blow the ceiling off of a GPP.
Yeah, I like Samuels as much as Adam, it sounds like, but I do think that's a sharp take out to fade him in GPPs given his ownership, and go with someone like Antonio Brown, go with someone like Juju Smith-Schuster, or the other direct pivot is Stephen Ridley. You say, hey, they get out early and then they just ride Ridley as a runner. But on DraftKings, that doesn't set up as well. If you do want to take these guys in tournaments, you need the Raiders to do something. And Jared Cook makes a lot of sense this week as a pivot. And then Marcel Aitman, I was encouraged with his game last week. Only saw 4 targets, but I believe 3 of those 4 were actually end zone targets. Had a touchdown where he caught a touchdown, that counted, but also had a touchdown where he got 1 foot in and then just barely missed getting his 2nd foot in. So it could have been a 2-touchdown game for Marcel Aitman. Big target, and I think in garbage time he could see a lot of looks. There's obviously still Seth Roberts and some other weapons, Jalen Richard as a running back if you wanted to do that. But yeah, Adam, your thoughts on kind of these Steelers as GPP plays, and do you have any faith in any of these Oakland guys if you're going to play those guys?
Yeah, I think for sure Oakland is terrible. A lot of their metrics and their points allowed, like they've actually done well against quarterbacks and wide receiver 1s and wide receivers 2s because there's no volume, or they're so bad against tight ends and running backs. Like people don't even have to go to their wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. So it would give me some pause on Antonio Brown at 9K or Juju at 8,200, but they're for sure awesome plays. I mean, Team Watch the Games has let me know that Tyreek Hill was very close to a 6-catch, 300-yard, 4-touchdown game. So,
Patrick Mahomes threw it 38 times last week against these same Raiders, and they scored 33 points to kind of keep Kansas City's foot on the gas.
Right. So that's what Pete's alluding to, if Oakland plays well, then yeah, all bets are off. Then it's for sure. Right. If Oakland's offense plays well, then it's all bets are off. Then yeah, Antonio Brown is going to smash.
They don't even have to play well. They just have to kind of keep up, just stay within 10 points, and that keeps Pittsburgh throwing.
I do think Pittsburgh's
go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say Pittsburgh's defense to me is just a different class than the Chiefs. I mean, I know they didn't show it on Sunday night, but Pittsburgh's defense has the ceiling to be really awesome.
Agree. All right. Eagles at Cowboys, Adam. What are the news and notes here? And please give me an Amari Cooper take.
Cole Beasley looks like he's going to play through this foot issue that he has. Slight nick to Michael Gallup, who I still think is slightly in play for kind of thin tournament options. Golden Tate's role has really come to light lately. I have the same issues with Golden Tate as Keenan Allen, and don't get me wrong, I love Keenan Allen, but Golden Tate and Keenan Allen both need just a ton of targets to get there from a ceiling perspective. So Golden Tate is only 4,800 though. I think he's in play, and yeah, we already mentioned it earlier. Ertz versus Kittle versus Kelsey versus Ebron. The Bible narrative is in play. The defense for the Cowboys is a concern, but Zach Ertz is just the chemistry. Even after the game, Eagles were asked. Reporters are it's too much of the offense going through Zach Ertz, and maybe that's viable. I don't know, but it's so glaring to anybody with 2 eyes that Wentz just drops back and looks for Ertz. So certainly like Ertz, but I think Al certainly Ertz, but Ezekiel Elliott to me is right there with Saquon and Christian McCaffrey, and a lot of people are going to do the stars and scrubs thing where maybe they play 2 of the cheap guys, and they can only pick 1 of these expensive guys, and I think Zeke is firmly in play to be one of the expensive guys on a long week. I think this Eagles team is a shell of their former selves, even though they've won 2 straight.
You mean people aren't going to play Zeke this week?
Oh, they 100% are. It's going to be, Zeke, Barkley, and McCaffrey are all going to be owned heavily.
Okay, I thought that you were saying that people weren't going to, people are overlooking Ezekiel Elliott this week because of all the value guys. If people aren't going to own Zeke, please don't.
I'm saying I think one of a lot of people are only going to have to choose of one of the 3 running backs I mentioned: Zeke, Barkley, CMC.
So you're telling me it's going to be contrarian to take both Zeke Elliott and Christian McCaffrey this week?
I don't know about contrarian, but if you play 2 of those, if you play neither Samuels or Wilson, you're immediately contrarian. How about that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. But if you play one of them with both, I think it's very possible and not difficult to fit Zeke and McCaffrey in a lineup. And, it's hard for me to not want to do that, considering that we've got basically a beefed up Alvin Kamara from last season in McCaffrey in terms of volume and inclusion, and nobody else challenging him for touches or around the goal line. And Ezekiel Elliott leading the entire league in touches, now playing at home against a defense that's really crumbled the last 4 weeks. They went from being a very good defense against the run to one of the worst 4 in terms of allowing yards and fantasy points to running backs over the past 4 weeks in the Eagles. So he plays at home against a team that is struggling defensively, and you know he's going to get 20 to 28 touches in this game. I don't know if I want to fade Zeke.
All right. So, Adam, I asked you a direct question about Amari Cooper. You didn't answer. You also didn't include Kamara in those running backs. Two questions now that I hope you can answer. Amari Cooper take, and second, is Kamara, in consideration for your lineup?
Here we go again with the lineup. I've already
Just
said too much about the freaking
already,
lineup.
Adam.
I've already said too much about construction. I'll give an Amari take. He's a talented player in an awesome matchup. The Eagles continue to trot out guys off the street in the secondary. From that perspective, yeah, I think his ownership will be up. And as Al has talked about many times, like when Amari Cooper's ownership is up, it's probably time to not be on him in tournaments. And yeah, I'm not sure that he fits. Like, I prefer T.Y. Hilton than Keenan Allen in that same price range as Amari Cooper.
But if you're going to lock button and Pete, we just got new sheets in the guest room. So, you can lock button if you'd like. Yeah.
That's what I was hoping to get some sort of joke like that from Adam, but he gives a real take after ignoring my question. I'm not going to talk about Amari Cooper, but I will talk about Zach Ertz, Carson Wentz as interesting plays. Wentz is throwing a lot, but the concern would be this Cowboys defense and how they're hogging the ball. You'll get them a really low ownership. I do think Ertz is going to come in pretty low owned. I think people are going to play Ebron. I think people who are spending up are going to click Kelsey a lot. And we talked about Gronkowski. So that's a low-owned stack, maybe throwing Golden Tate. But, yeah, it's hard for me to get really behind that because of how the Cowboys are playing. The only reason I'm at least a little encouraged, I think the Cowboys should try to throw a little bit more in this game, considering the Eagles have been so bad in their secondary. Yeah, I guess that's it for me. Al, any final thoughts here?
No, that's about it.
All right. Well, we can go to Adam's favorite segment, the conviction plays. Adam, why don't you give at least one? Maybe you give out a full roster of conviction plays.
Just give your lineup to people already.
And then I'll toss it to Al.
All right. For the best segment on the entire program, I am going to go with DeAndre Hopkins. And I know the game log watchers aren't going to be too excited to click DeAndre Hopkins. I think if you look a little bit deeper, DeAndre Hopkins continues to play at just a really, really elite level. And this is finally the spot for him to get loose against a secondary that can't match his talent in a game environment that should be really, really good with really, really strong weather conditions as well. So yeah, I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins down at 7,800.
All right. Well, Adam wouldn't answer my question about Alvin Kamara, and I know I've used him as a conviction play about 24 times going back to last year. But I'm going to do it again. I'm going with Alvin Kamara as my strong conviction play. Adam's trying to hide him because he's going to be in his lineup, which means he is an awesome play. Looking this year, he went for 46 points against Tampa Bay early in the season. Obviously, it's a different role with Ingram back, but give me a bounce back for the Saints and Alvin Kamara. Al, your conviction play, and get us the hell out of here.
I'm going to give you guys a trifecta this week for the conviction play. I'm going with the triple Lindy. It's difficult to pull off, but I think that you can do it. Give me Christian McCaffrey to Ezekiel Elliott to Travis Kelsey, and I want to find a way to fit that trifecta into one lineup. You know why? Because sometimes you just have to play all the dudes. So for Adam and for Pete.
He's giving 33% of the lineup out.
For Adam and for Pete. And for producer Luke and Jerry's cute little fuzzy butt sitting on the couch behind him. I'm Al. Bye, everybody.
We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.